Okay, now I'm going to go over absolute cell reference versus relative cell reference. So a cell reference pretty much is kind of what it says. It's referring to another cell. So if we look at here, like here, you're in cell D1 and your cell reference is F1. So what it's going to do, it's just going to pull in, it's going to refer to cell F1 and pull in the value of the cell. So that's what a cell reference is. And then like this, you can copy it down, and now this becomes F2, this is F3, and this becomes F4. You're copying it down because this is a relative reference. A relative reference means it's relative, it'll change as you change its location, pretty much. So like now, you're in D1, as you move it down to D2, it's gonna, the cell's gonna think, oh, I shouldn't still be referring to F1, now I should move down one row, now it should be referring to row 2, which is F2. And then it'll copy it down. So that's what a relative reference is. And I'll show you in an example. Say we've got this, we've got these numbers here, and say we just want to add them together. So we've got D1 plus C1 equals 9. If we want to copy this down, so now here, this is D2 plus C2, which is 3 plus 11, 2 plus 12, 5 plus 6. So this works out great for us. We want a relative reference in here because as you copy it down, it's going to be relative with the cell that it's in and change the reference. And so that's perfect. So that kind of explains what a relative reference is. It's just one that'll change as you change its location if you copy it to another part of the worksheet. However, sometimes you don't want that. Sometimes you want to always be referring to the same cell. So let's look at this example. When you want to refer to the same cell, then you need an absolute reference. So let's say we've got this example right here. We've got interest rates for January, February, March, 5%, 3%, 2%. Well, we've got different people and how much savings they have. And we want to calculate interest. Interest is, we'll just do it, it's just simply say the savings times the interest rate. So I've got this formula here. I'll just start from scratch. You do plus savings times January interest rate, which is 5%. So it comes up to $20. So 400 times 5% is $20. And if you look at the formula, it's shown at savings just because this is formatted as an Excel table. So it's showing pound savings. If it wasn't formatted as a table, it would show the cell G2. And damn it, that's what I need. However, sometimes we don't want the cell reference to change. Now we want it to be sort of an absolute reference to always refer to the same cell. So in that case, we'd make it an absolute reference by adding $signs. And let's go through an example to show you what I mean. So let's say we've got this table here. We've got 3 people, we've got their savings amount, and we want to calculate interest for January, February, and March. And we've got our interest table right here. January interest is 5%, February is 3%, March is 2%. So we're going to do a simple formula, which is just savings times that month's interest rate. So we're going to say savings 400 times interest rate of 5%, and we got $20, which is simply G2 400 times B2 here. However, okay, now let's copy this down to see what Jim and Jill's interest is. We copy it down. I just copy it by clicking the little plus on the right, bottom right. Click OK. Oh, it's showing 0. But wait, 1,000 times 5% is not 0. Or this number times 5% is not 0. Why is it doing that? So let's look at it again. It's doing G3, which is right, times B3. Oh wait, B3 is over here. It changed it. Because you used relative cell reference. When you copy a reference without $signs in front of anything, it's going to change as you change the cell, which is what a relative reference will do. So we need to anchor this. We always want it to be looking at cell B2, which is this 5%. So to do that, we need to put dollar signs in front of the B and in front of the 2. That means it's going to always be looking at cell B2, and it's not going to change. The dollar signs just kind of like stomping in there. It's stuck at that cell reference. So now if we copy this down, there we go. Now we've got G3 times, it's still dollar sign B, dollar sign 2, so it's always going to refer to this 5%. And then here, it's going to also always refer to this 5%, B2. But now let's say, okay, we want to also calculate February interest and March interest. I mean, we could go in, redo the formula for each month, but that's the long way to do it. What you want to be able to do is copy this over and get your number. So I'm going to copy this over by dragging that little plus on the bottom right. Okay, this doesn't look right. February interest of 1. So what I'm expecting here is that $400 of savings times February, which is 3%, it's about $12. It's not 1. These numbers, and this is 5 cents. There's no way this can be right. So let's look at what happened. So now this formula is H2. H2 is this 20 times B2, which is still looking at the January interest rate. So it's doing 20 times 5%, which does equal 1. So I mean that part worked, but it's just all the references are wrong. What we want to do is have 400 times the February rate of 3%. So to do that, we need to anchor parts. You can anchor parts of a cell reference. You don't have to anchor the whole thing. You only want to anchor what's going to stay the same. I mean, if you still want stuff to change, then you have to do that. So what we're going to do, let's kind of think about going through this. We always want to refer to column G because it's always going to be the savings that we want to multiply. So we want to put a dollar sign in front of G. We don't want to put a dollar sign in front of the 2 because otherwise it'll always refer to this $400. But when we copy it down, we want it to refer to Jim's savings or to Jill's savings. So we want to leave the 2 unanchored. And then times dollar sign B, dollar sign 2. We always want it to be row 2 because interest rate is on row 2. So we want to have the dollar sign in front of the 2. So when we copy it down, it stays looking at this. But we don't always want it to be B because B is January. But when we copy it over to February, we want the February's interest rate. So we're going to delete this, press OK. So now we've got dollar sign G2. It's always going to look up here times B dollar sign 2. Let's first copy it. Let's test that out on January. If we copy it down, it gives us the same values, the same results. But now, let's say this one, it's still looking up G3, which is here, because the G stayed the same, and it's looking up B2, which is 5%. So this part worked out right, but here's the big test. Let's see if it'll work when we copy it over. So, I mean, I'm just dragging it here. You can just do right-click copy, right-click paste is another way to do it. And now that I pasted it, okay, this makes a little more sense. 400 times 3% is $12. 400 times 2% is $8. So that does make sense. Let's look at what it's doing here. So it's still looking up G2, which is $400. Now it's times C2, which is here. See, when I copy this over, the B changed from B to a C. However, the 2 didn't change. It stayed at 2 because we have the dollar sign in front of it. Same thing works for the G. The G stayed the same as G2 all the way. And the 2 stayed the same also, just even though it's not referenced, but it's just because we're copying it over and we're still in row 2. But when we look down, when we copied it down, the G stayed the same because we always want the savings, but the 3 changed. It changed from a 2 to a 3. And then here it should change to a 4. It did, G4. So that's how you would get the reference to work. I mean, the absolute reference is very critical. I mean, when you do VLOOKUPs or do lookups, you also want to make sure you're anchoring everything down because you don't want the reference of where, like the table array, to change. So when when you're doing formulas, you just kind of want to look at your results and just kind of a quick check this to think like, oh, does this make sense? If it doesn't make sense, go back and look at your formulas and see what it's actually doing. And one final tip is a quick way to change this dollar sign. Instead of going in and putting the dollar signs, typing them in, you can highlight it. If you press F4, see I'm pressing F4 right now. And now. And now. See, you press F4 and it's going to keep changing it. Like here now there's $2 signs. There's a dollar sign in front of the 2. Press it again, there's a dollar sign in front of the B. Press it again and there's no dollar sign. So all you have to do is just highlight it, press F4, and that's a quick way to make the change instead of going in and manually typing in the dollar signs. I mean, it doesn't save a whole lot of time, but it's just a quick little tip. So that's the difference between absolute and relative cell reference. I hope this helps you, and thanks a lot. All right, here we are going to work with array formulas. I'm going to talk about what they are and show you 2 examples of them. So first, array formulas perform multiple calculations in a worksheet in one cell or in a range of cells. They perform the same operation as a normal function, but you just see the same formula. This is one major reason why they are used, just being consistent with your formulas. They also can make the file size smaller by using one array formula instead of hundreds of normal formulas. So the first, I'm going to go over a single cell array formula example. So let's say we have this table here. We got all the different sites, we got sales, expenses, and employees. And say what we want to do is find out what is the largest sales to employee ratio to see which company is pretty much performing the best. So like in the old world, well, not the old world, but what normally you could do is just to do a normal formula. So we want sales divided by employees to see what that comes out to. And it's 381, 8,000 divided by 21. If we want to find the most, we'd do all of them. And then we would use the max function. Max, and this, there. So what it's doing is 600. 600 is the most out of all of these. So 6,000 divided by 10 is 600. So site B is really performing the best per employee. But we can use an array formula to get rid of all of these extra calculations. I mean, for only 5 sites, it's not bad, but if you have many sites, you might not want to add the extra column. You might, if you have all these extra formulas, you can add to the file size. What we can do is get rid of this. And we'll just do a single cell array formula. So what we're going to do is equals max, parentheses. Now here we're going to do the whole formula. So what we're going to do is all the B's, so it's B2 to B6, divided by all the D's, and the parentheses. Now here's what you have to make sure you do. You do Control-Shift-Enter when you're done with the formula. There, you get 600. What Control-Shift-Enter does is puts these little squiggly brackets at the beginning and the end. That tells Excel that it's an array formula, and that lets you do this this calculation. So what it's going to do, it's going to go B2 to B6 divided by D2 to D6. Obviously, you got to make sure these are the same range, same number of rows, because otherwise it'll give you an error because it's dividing by something that's not there, or so on. But what you can do is put those whole formula in here. There's only one cell, and you get the same result, which is 600. So when Excel goes and does B3 divided by D3 and takes the max of that, of the whole range, it's 600, and you get your result. But you just have to remember, Control-Shift-Enter when you're done to put these brackets. You can't physically type them in there. Excel's not going to recognize it. So that's our first example of a single cell array. Okay, and now we're going to go over a second example of using arrays. That's for multiple cell array. So you see we've got this table here. We got sales, expenses, employees, and we want to find the profit or the income loss. You can simply do sales minus expenses, which is what it is. Copy it down. I mean, that's the long way to get it, where you have a formula on each one. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, but we can do that also by doing an array. And to do an array, we're just going to do equals. We're going to put the whole formula in there. So it's just pretty much column B minus column C. Then you got to remember to Control-Shift-Enter. You have to do that. Puts the brackets around it. And you got your result, 300. And now you can copy this down. And you have all your results here. 2,000. 6,000 minus 4,000 is 2,000. 9,200 minus 7,100. 2,100. So you got, I mean, the calculations work fine. And you just have an array formula now, which is doing pretty much the same thing. And that's just a way to use an array formula for in a multiple cell. Thanks. Okay, now we're going to go over different common errors. Getting errors when you're doing functions is very frustrating, and it sometimes can be hard to figure out what the error is. I mean, you can keep going back and forth trying to see what it is and just can't figure it out. So what I'm going to do is go over 6 different types of errors that you could see with functions or in Excel, and kind of just tell you how to get around them if it's possible. So we'll start with the first one, which is all pound signs. Sometimes you could have different formulas or get some different information imported in, and you get different. You'll have an error that says pound signs. When you look at it, it's really not pound signs. It's really a number. This is a simple one to correct. All it is just means the cell isn't wide enough for for your number right here. So all you got to do is go in between the A and B, and you can double click, and it'll make it wider. And you can even make it bigger if you need it bigger. But as long as it will display your number, then it'll be okay. So that's really what the pound sign is. That's a pretty easy fix. But I mean, when you scroll through your data, you see that sometimes. So it's even good. What you can do is highlight the whole table and double click on any one. And what it's going to do, it'll increase the width of all the cells, just like this one. See how D now is wider to fit in your data, and then it'll get rid of all the pound signs. Okay, next one is the formatting of a date. Say we're inserting a date, and like here's equals today. So what that's going to do is put today's date. However, your result is coming up as this, 5 different numbers. That's how Excel keeps track of numbers. It starts off at 1 and goes up 1 per day, which then it goes back to I believe it's 1900. So today's date is really 42,026 days, but that doesn't help us anything. When we're looking at a spreadsheet, we want to know what the actual date is. So when you get this error, it's pretty easy to correct. You're going to just right click and go to format the cells. And we'll see how right now it's set up as general. We just want to go to date. And then you can set it up to have, if you want it, format it like this, if you want it like this, however you want it to look. You just put that, you click OK, and there's your date. So this is today's date, and now it's formatted the correct way. The next error is divide by 0. This is pretty much just a mathematical error where, I mean, anyone who's taken math classes knows, I mean, you can't divide by 0. It comes up as a division error. So we say we have these numbers here, and then we've got this formula, which is 100 divided by the cell A2. So it's 100 divided by 52 comes up here. Here's 100 divided by 51, and here's just 100 divided by 0. To correct this, you basically have to find the divide by zeros and look at what it's divided by. See, it's divided by A4, which is here. So that's a 0. So you want to, if you can change this 0, you can get rid of, change it to a number that anything besides 0 and then divide correctly. You can do a formula which will get rid of this called the if error. The if error, basically called if error, then you put your formula in there, and then you're going to put, see, here's the value, and now you put the value if it's an error. If this comes up as an error, which is divided by 0 is an error, we just want it to say 0, something like that. So now the result is 0. I mean, if it's really divided by 0, which is an error, or you could have it say some word, like you could have it say divide by 0 if you don't want it to show that error message. But that's just a way to get around this divide by 0 error. But ultimately, the best way is to not divide by 0, to get rid of all your zeros in here. Okay, the fourth error is the #ref error. You'll see this error sometimes. All that means it's an invalid reference. And an example is this. Say right now I'm showing the formulas. I change it. See if I change it back to here. Like 66. This is D3, so it's pulling this number. Here it's D2, so it's pulling this number. Now if I go back to formulas, say I want to copy this. If I'm going to copy this up here, now it's D1 because it's not absolute references. It's relative, so it's gonna change. However, now if I'm still copying this up, it's gonna give me the #ref error because like it's going in a pattern. I mean, it starts off at 3, then 2. So if you're copying down, Excel knows it goes to 1, and below 1 is 0. But there's no D0. That's not a valid cell reference, so it's invalid reference, and that's why you get the #ref. To correct this, when you get these errors, it's gonna get rid of the actual error in there because it's not gonna show plus D1 like it shows here. So you kind of want to just look for patterns on like what you just did. The best way to do that really is just to do undo. If I went up here and clicked undo, it'll take me back a step. And then if you kind of redo this step, now I would see, oh, that's how I come up with the error, because here's D2, here's D1. So you kind of just have to go back a step, or go back 2 steps, see when the error occurred, and then you can kind of backtrack your way into figuring out why is there a cell reference, and then you can correct it. I mean, you may have to anchor these, you may have to change where the reference numbers are. I mean, whatever you have to do, but that's how you find it. Next one is the #name error. This basically means that there's a problem with the formula. Either the name reference that you're using is wrong, or part of the formula is wrong. Maybe you're supposed to have a couple different criteria in there and you don't have them. So first way, I mean, there's a couple ways you can break it down. First you find the error, #name error, and then we're going to look at the formula. So we look at it, it says average and PYROLL. That's the name reference that we're looking up. So we can check to see, why is this coming up as an error? So if we go up to formulas, go to name manager, we can look, and here's like all our names that we have created. And if we look and say, oh, there's one that says PAYROLL, payroll. So I must have just spelled this wrong. So if I put an A in there, so now it comes up as 55, which is just the average of these 3 numbers. But it also works if you spelled the formula wrong. See, like here, average, this isn't a real formula, AVE, it's just average spelled wrong, so it's coming up as name. That's an invalid function, so it's going to come up as the name because it doesn't know what it's looking for. So the way to get around that is, you can look at it and tell just by reading it if the average is wrong. You can also go in here and click this FX, and then it'll pull up the function. And if it knows what you're talking about, then it's going to pull up the function wizard, and you can put it in right there. And the third way is just you want to just look through the formula, make sure you have all the parts in there. This one is there's only one part, but in some functions have multiple parts, like if you're looking at Vlookup or so on. You just want to make sure all the parts are in there. So the best way to do that is put your cursor on there, click on the FX, and then just make sure all the different cells are filled in that are needed to be filled in. So, it takes a little bit of work sometimes to find these errors, but that's a good way to back into it. And the last error is the #NA error. This is common when you're doing like a lookup, like a VLOOKUP or the index match. What it's basically saying is, I can't find the match. I can't find the lookup that you're trying to find. So say we have these tables here. We've got here's a list of different people with their score, score on something, maybe a bowling score, and their age. And here we're doing the VLOOKUP. And what we're doing, we're looking up this name in cell D2, or cell D to, or column D to column F, sorry. And we're pulling in the second column, which is his score, and false, so we got an exact match. So it finds Joe, which is in here right there, and it pulls the second column, which is 138. Here it's looking up John, finds John, pulls 130. Here it's looking up Tony, scrolling through, nope, it's not there. So it's pulling an NA. And NA is just basically saying it can't find what it's looking for. So there's a couple ways you can kind of double check this. First, what you want to do is we're going to want to look for Tony. So it's checking, is there a Tony in here? So what we're going to do, we're going to look in this formula and kind of scroll down, see if there's Tony. If there is, then you have to keep looking, because then that's not the error. I mean, this happened to be the error because he's not in here. And if you have a large amount of data, you can just highlight it and go to edit and find, and just find the name. But it's not in here, so that would have been our error. But say it is in here, and we want to find out what the error is. Okay, so that's not the error, but let's try a different way. Another way to check is to make sure that you're looking up your lookup table. The leftmost column is what you're looking in. So like in this VLOOKUP, the leftmost column is column D, which is name. So it's shown, so you're going to look for the name in here. That's what Excel's going to do. If this happened to be, say, an E, now if I copy this on all of them, see, because it's looking up for Joe, but it's looking in column E. It doesn't find the name Joe in here, so that's why it's going to give you that error. So you want to make sure the leftmost column in your range is the name, is what you're looking up for. Another thing to look at, let's say, okay, I'm going to undo that. So now we have, say, D2 to DF. You want to check this number. This is the column that you're looking up. You're starting at D. D would be 1, E would be 2, F would be 3. But what if, say, you had a 4 in here? Well, then you got a pound reference error. So it's different than the pound NA, but that's just another error that you need to be aware of for a VLOOKUP. And one final way to look it up, say we have Joe here, but there happens to be, say, an extra space in the name. A space will kind of help you, not help you find the error. I mean, or not help you, it won't give you a result, because it's looking up, if you put your cursor on here, it's Joe space. So now Excel is going in here and it's looking for Joe with a space after it. Doesn't find it. But if you just look at this with your eye, oh, there's a Joe here, there's a Joe here. Why is it not working? So the first thing you'd want to do is check if there's a space. Like here, it's Joe with no spaces after it. Here, there's Joe with a space after it. So one way to do it, you could just go in here, click backspace and get rid of it. Or you can use the trim function. If you type in trim and you put parentheses around what you're looking up, A2, now it'll find it. Because what trim will do, it just gets rid of all the spaces. So that's just kind of a VLOOKUP error check to help you. So those are 4 different ways to kind of help you with the pound NA error. The main reason though why an NA comes up when a VLOOKUP is just the name's not in there, like which is in this case. There's no Tony in here. But I mean, if you find it, you have to dig down a little further, and it could be a little difficult. But so those are 6 common errors in Excel. You're going to see them. I mean, the more you work with Excel, you're going to get errors. No matter how good you get at functions, it's gonna happen. So don't get frustrated, and just keep doing your double checks, and you'll have no problems. Thanks a lot. All right, here we're going to go over working with a formatted table. For most of the examples I've been going through, I've just been using a normal Excel table, so you can kind of see how all the functions and everything works. But you're going to encounter formatted tables, a lot. I mean, formatted tables are great because they Excel recognizes them right as a table. So when you refer to them, or if you like to add lines to them, Excel automatically will update everything. But let's go through the example, and I'll just show you the difference. Say we've got this table here with sales and expenses, and we want to get net income, which is just sales minus expenses. So what we would do normally for a function formula, we would do plus B2 minus C2. This would be our net income. We copy this down, and there we've got our net income. I mean, this works out fine. You've got a different formula in each one. But if we got rid of this, say we don't have that, now we've got net income here, and see, we're going to format this as a table. I'm just going to go here, format as a table, click OK. So now this becomes formatted as a table. That just means that Excel recognizes automatically as a table here, and when you add items to it, it'll just automatically work. But now, if we go into this cell, and we're going to say we're going to calculate sales minus expenses, which is net income, you're going to do plus sales minus expenses, press enter, and two things happen here. First, I only did it in the cell D2, and Excel automatically copied all of this down. And second, you just need to look. The look of the formula is different. Before it would be B2 minus C2, but now Excel recognizes this as a table and recognizes these column headings. So now all this is doing is at sales minus at expenses. So it just knows whatever's in this column less this column. So that's just to kind of let you know, when you encounter spreadsheets that have formatted tables, you're going to see these functions, and you might be wondering what does it say at sales or what's at expenses. You have to look for the column headings, and it's just going to copy it automatically down. But that's just a quick way to show you what happens when you work with formatted tables and formulas. Thanks. And now I want to go over 3 of the common types of errors that you get with VLOOKUP and how to fix them. So here's the first one. Say we've got these students, we want to find the grade in this main table, just like we did in the first example. So we're going to insert a function, do VLOOKUP, we're looking up this student name, this table array, just like we did before, column 3, we'll do false because we want an exact match, and it works here. We copy it down, and we get £NA. What that means, what that error is, we're looking up the student Tony. If we look in here, Tony is not in here. So it's going to give us an error. Excel's going to look all the way down here, not find anything, and since it doesn't find anything, there's nothing it can pull, so it gives you an error. So that's why we get the £NA. That's one of the common errors. The second type of error is just the setting up of the formula. Say we insert the function, we're doing the exact same way, VLOOKUP, we're looking up this student in this array, but say we put column 5. Sometimes there could be extra columns in here that you want to pull, but your table only goes to a certain length. And we put false, click OK, and we get this error, this £REF. What that's doing is showing you the error that it's only looking in the table E to G, E, F, G. However, we're trying to pull the 5th column. So column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Column I doesn't fall within the table, so it's going to give us an error. You can only, if you only use this range of E to G, you can only put a number 1, 2, or 3. It can only pull one of those 3. Otherwise, if you do higher than that, it's going to give you a £REF error. And the third common error that I want to show you is just kind of with the formatting of the names. Let's say we're looking up Tim in here. Same type of what we've been doing. We're looking up Tim, table array, E to G, column index 3. We put false, and it comes up £NA. So you're thinking, okay, it's not in the table, so let me look. Oh, there is Tim. But why is it not pulling it in? sometimes there's problems with the name. There could be spaces or it could be slightly different. If we look, here's the Tim that we're looking up. If you put your cursor right up here in the status bar, you see you go all the way to the left, it's TIM, and it's where it ends. You keep arrowing to the right, and it's not doing anything. So it's only 3 characters, TIM. If you look on this one, if you go over here, I go all the way to the left, there's a space, then TIM. And this could happen sometimes when you import names or numbers from another file. These strange spaces can get in there. So that's why it's not going to work. If it's just one item like this in a table, you can change it yourself. You can just go in and delete the space. However, if you have a lot, you can use this function. It's called trim. And what trim's going to do, it's going to get rid of all, it's going to remove all spaces from a text except the single space that's you're supposed to have in between words. So we got Tim here. We click OK. So now I can copy this all the way down, copy this all the way up. And now if I'm going to copy this right over it, I'm doing Control-C. I'm going up here, going to paste special, and I'm going to paste special the values. That means it's just going to show, like, see here it says Jenny, but here it shows the formula. So now we don't need this anymore. And if you look, we've got Tim, and there's only 3 characters, and it's Tim. It matches to here, and now we pull the 93. So that's how to correct that type of error. Those are the 3 most common type of errors. There are other ones, but those are the 3 most types that you'll see. And so this concludes the VLOOKUP training. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, we are going to go over a nested if statement. Nested if statement is really, it's just an if statement that's within an if statement. So you can have, instead of a true and false value, maybe the false value could be a second if statement. It's a very powerful tool that you can use to help you manipulate different data, but it can be tricky to set up just because you're doing a function within a function. So let's first go over just what an if statement is. Let's look at this here, this example right here. This formula is actually right up here in B1, but I put it out here so you can see it better. The if statement is, it starts off with if as the function. Here, the first part is the criteria. And the criteria is, does A1 equal sunny? The word sunny. Like here's A1, Excel checks if this equals sunny. If it does equal sunny, the next part of the if function is the true value. So if this equals true, it's going to display this, which is let's go swimming. If it's false, if it doesn't equal sunny, then it's going to say it's not sunny. So this formula is right up here. It's the exact same thing. So in this case, it's saying, is A1 equal sunny? Yes, it is. So it's going to give you the true value, which is let's go swimming. If all of a sudden this changed to say cloudy, now this is false, so it gives you the it's not sunny as the result. So that's just a simple way, just a simple if statement, explains how it works. But a nested if statement allows you to put an if statement right into here. So, okay, we have, they're telling you, is it sunny or not? It's not sunny is the result, but it's cloudy, but it also could be rainy. So there's multiple choices. There's more than just 2 choices, like a yes or no. So now we also need to distinguish between cloudy and rainy. So let's do a second if statement. Let's just do this on the side. We'll build them separately before we nest them together to show you how it works. So let's see, we had this if statement equals if, and now the expression is A1 equal cloudy, and then we can put whatever we want it to be true if it equals cloudy. You could say it's cloudy. I'll just say get my jacket. Whatever, it doesn't really matter. This is just to show you what happens there. And if it's not cloudy, then the last choice, the other choice would be like that it's raining, so you can put it's raining. You put to end the parentheses, press OK. So now we've got, is this cloudy? It checks true, so it gets the result of get my jacket. If it's rainy, now it comes to, it doesn't say cloudy, so you don't put get my jacket, so you put the false criteria, and it says it's raining. So now we've got two different if statements. We already determined in this will be our main if statement, is if it's sunny, you put let's go swimming. So now if this says it's sunny, it's going to say let's go swimming. But what if it doesn't say sunny? If it says cloudy or rainy, we want to put this if statement right here on this false part. So what I'm going to do, I'm just highlight it. I'm going to do Control C to copy. I'm going to go here and I'm going to delete this. So now our false part is, instead of saying it's not sunny, we want to put another if statement in here. So I can delete our old one. So now it says let's go swimming. So let's break this down. Excel starts off here. It says, look, if A1 equals sunny, right off the bat it says sunny, so it's going to give you the true value of let's go swimming. If it doesn't say sunny, say it says cloudy, now Excel is going to say, does A1 equal sunny? Nope, it doesn't. It's false. So here's the true value, and this whole big statement is the false value. So what's going to do, it's going to do the false value. And the false value is another if statement, which is our nested if statement. And it'll say if A1 equals cloudy, so it's looking at A1 again, and it does say cloudy, so then it's going to put get my jacket, which is what it put. If this happens to be rainy, then, it starts off here as sunny. It said, nope, it's false. It doesn't say sunny. So it skips this, and it goes to this whole statement. And now it evaluates the second if statement. A1 equals cloudy. Nope, it doesn't. So you don't put get my jacket, then you put it's raining. So that's how you can nest an if statement in there. You could do another if statement. You could put it, instead of it's raining, you could delete that and put a third if statement in there if you need it. That gets really complex, and we're not going to go over all that. But I just wanted to show you how to nest an if statement. And when you're first learning, and even just to understand it better, it's good to create both if statements and then just copy and paste it into the main if statement, and it'll be a lot easier of a way to make sure that both parts of it work. And that's how you will get a nested if statement. Thanks a lot. Okay, here we're going to talk about naming a range. So, you've seen what a range looks like, and a range would look something like A2 to A6, something like that. And it's not very descriptive. If you see this in a spreadsheet that you're trying to figure out what's going on, you could obviously go to A2 to A6, see what it is, but it helps if you could name this something. It would be a lot easier to tell what's going on, and you could make this dynamic where it'll change. There's just a lot of benefits to naming a range. So I'm going to show you how to do this and go over a couple of the tricky parts to it. So let's just start off with this table right here. We've got a bunch of employees and how many hours they worked. To name a range, there's two different ways you can name a range. First way to do it is you can highlight it and then go up into this formula bar right here and just type in what you want. You can call it employees. Press enter. There. So now you've named this range. So now see, if you look, A2 is this, A3, it comes up here. Once you highlight it all, the name pops back up. It's employees. So that's just one way to name a range. A second way to name a range is if you go up to the formula bar up here, or to the ribbon, you go to formulas, then over to define name. Press that. You want to put what it refers to. So we're going to highlight this. See, it refers to B2 to B7. Name, we're going to call it, we'll just call it hours. We'll click OK. And so now we can check this. You highlight it all. Boom, there it is, hours. So that worked. So now we have two different ranges that we just created. and one called employees and one called hours. Now, let's say we want to use this in a formula. The old way, say we wanted to sum up all these hours. The old way you could do, you could do plus this, and go all the way up. There's one way to do it. You could do the sum function and highlight all these. Press OK. You can do it that way, but since we already have this range named, it pops it right up as hours, so you can see what it is. Instead of going through the whole way of doing that, you can just type in sum. Whoops. Start that over. Sum parentheses. Oh, I can't type today. Sum, and then just type in the word hours. It'll highlight the range for you there. Click OK, and it comes up to 224, and it's sum hours. So that's just one way. That's a way you can use a named range right in the formula. Now let's say we want to edit this, and say we want to maybe call it something else or whatever. If you go up to formulas here in your ribbon, name manager, press that, it's going to tell you all the names that you have set up here. So see, look, we have employees set up and hours set up, and you can it'll even start telling you what the values are. And if you make this wider, you get to see them all. See, here's all the names of the employees. Here's all the hours. It'll tell you where it refers to. So let's just say we want to change employees. You can click edit. Now, if we wanted to change the range, we can change it here. Say we want to call it whatever, employees 2. Click OK, and now it's called employees 2. And hours, you can change it if you want to delete it. You can also add a new one in here too instead of clicking define name. So there's many different things you can do to edit it. So that's how you would edit a range. Now I'm going to go through showing you a quick way to create a lot of them through labels. Let's say we have this table here. We got 4 quarters here. We got our different expenses. We got food expense, labor expense, controllables expense. Say we wanted to create, say quarter 1, we wanted to create a range like this called quarter 1. We wanted to call this quarter 2. Say we wanted to call all this food expense. You can do this one by one, or you can create from a selection from the labels. So let's highlight the table. If you go up to formulas here, create from selection. Now here you get to choose what you want to, this is where you're going to name the range. Do the top row and left column. So the top row, so we're going to get one that's called food expense, one called labor, one called controllables. We also have left column checked. If we don't have to get one. If we check it, we're going to get a table or a range called quarter 1, called quarter 2, and so on. We click OK. So now we should have these named ranges. So let's go back up to formulas, check name manager, and now there we go. Look, we got food expense, we got hours, and just like that, it created 7 different name ranges for us that we can use anywhere else in the spreadsheet. So now see quarter 1 has all the different ranges. So if we close this, we can do other formulas. We can just use the name of there instead of actually putting in the whole formula in there. So that's a quick way to do it through labels. And the last item that I want to go over is dynamic ranges. You can sometimes, if you have a named range, but it's in a formula or a table that changes, you want to be able to adjust to it. Where, like, say we want to have all these, add up all the parks that are, say, in wherever. Here's all the cities with the parks, but new items are going to be added to this table. We want, when we use the reference to parks somewhere, we want it to pull in these new items. So to do that, Excel lets you, the first thing you'd have to do is format this as a table. You see, you can go up to here from home, go to format as table. You can pick however you want it to look, it doesn't really matter. See, my table has headers. It's gonna automatically tell you how big the table is. You click OK, and now you have this. So now we can highlight this and say we want to call this Parks. Click OK. So now we've got these five numbers here. So say we want to do sum parentheses Parks. See, it comes out to 111. Because what it's doing is adding these 5 items up. Now all of a sudden, say there's a new park, or new parks that open up in a different city. You could just type right in, say New York, NYC, New York City. Go over, say there's 10 more parks in New York City. Press enter, and there. See, now this range parks automatically it was dynamic, so it automatically added this new one in there. Now say we want to add another one, whatever it is, say Buffalo. 20 parks there, and now it's 141. And it's just very dynamic. You can delete something, and it's back down to 131. And that's just how to create a dynamic range for, if you're basing off a table, it's going to change. If it's not going to change, then you don't need to go through these extra steps, but it's just helpful because you want to make sure that you capture all the parks that are in the table. And that's everything that I have for a named range. Hope this helps you. Thanks. All right, let's go over the paste special function. It's not really a function, but it's just functionality within Excel that helps you basically paste the results of a function without actually seeing the formula in there. Best way to do it is to go through an example. Okay, we just got some people, golfers with their golf scores. Say we just want to total up what's their score for 3 games. We'd use the easiest function of all of them is just the sum function. So I'm just gonna type it right in, sum these three row cells, press enter, and we get 283. Okay, we can copy this down, and as you can see, I mean, it's some B2 to D2, here it's B3 to D3, and so on. I mean, Excel will copy it down as long as you don't have these anchored with dollar signs, it'll anchor them. But, so this is just a simple formula, adds all this up. However, like how I showed where when I copy this down, this is gonna change, like from B2 to D2. Here it's now B3 to D3. Say you want to copy this now to another part of the worksheet, and say Joe's 3-game score. If I just hit copy, which is I did Control C. Now here I do Control V, and I paste it. It's showing up as 0, because if you look at the formula, it's F2 to H2 now, because what it does, it's not an absolute reference, it's a relative reference here. So when it moves over 1, 2, 3, 4 spots, it moves this reference over from B over 4 spots to C, D, E, F. So now this reference becomes F2 to H2. There's no numbers in there, and this isn't really Joe's 3-game score. What we can do though, copy it and paste special. See, if I right click on it, go to copy. Here, instead of, this would be just to paste it, and that's what we didn't want. But if we did copy, you can go paste special, and here you get to pick. I mean, you can move over different parts of the cell. Like here, I'm just moving the values over. You do paste special values, and it's going to move the actual value, this 283, over. It's not going to even look at the formula. You click OK, and it's 283. So now, like up in the formula bar, here, this is a sum. But when you do paste special values, it pastes the value of 283 right over it. And I mean, it works for more than just values. You can do the formatting or whatever else you want that's related to the cell. But that's just a simple way of what paste special values will do. And you don't have to paste it over another cell. Say you have this spreadsheet, and instead of just like sum, say you might be referring to a whole nother worksheet. and you have this file, you want to send this out to somebody, but you don't want to send out both files. You're only sending out the one. And so you just want them to have these numbers. What you can do, you can highlight all this, do copy, and now just write over it. Don't do anything else. Do paste special values, click OK. Now I press escape, and now it just changed to write the values right on top of it. I mean, you didn't even have to like move it to another column or anything. You just do it right over it. So that's what paste special values will do. It's a pretty important tool to understand when you're especially if you're working where you'd be sending this spreadsheet out to other people that might want to be looking at your formulas. And that would be it for this. Thanks a lot. Okay, here we're going to go over the status bar. The status bar is right down here. This is the bottom right part of your screen. And all it will do is it gives you a quick way to perform some of the most basic functions in Excel without actually having to use them. For example, let's say we've just got these numbers. They can be whatever they are. If you highlight them and you look down here, it'll tell you the three of the most basic ones, which is the count, the sum, and the average. So if you take all five of these, it sums up to 35. The average of them is 7, and the count just means it counts how many there are. There's 5. Say like if we just did 4, the count is 4. Here's the sum, and that. I mean, you could even. I mean, if you highlight blank rows, it's not going to count them. It's just going to count the ones that actually have something in them. So these, it's just a quick way if you're doing a formula instead. I mean, just for your own reference, if you want to find out what something adds up to. It's very quick. You can see it's 35, and these are just 3 of the ones that you can set up. You can, if you right click. There's also a couple other ones if you want to have the max and the minimum in here. Say we put the minimum, maximum, or numerical count. I'm just going to do minimum and maximum. Unclick on it, and now see I highlighted them. It also has the min of 2, which is the lowest, the max of 12, which is the highest. So, I mean, this will work anywhere in the cell. So you have some more numbers here, 112. You highlight them, there. There's your sum is 112. Max is 100, minimum is 12, count to 2, and here's your average. So it's just a quick way to get some simple cell formulas done for you, like really fast. Thanks. The Vlookup statement is great for pulling in a match from a larger table, but however, the one drawback is it only pulls in the first match. But like, what if you're looking up a table that has multiple matches, and maybe you want the second match or the third match? I'm going to go over 3 examples here of how you can get that second match. The first example is right here. Say we have a list of cities and states with the numbers of cars sold and the total dollar amount of sales. Say we want to pull in the number of cars sold in the state, but say we want we're going to use a VLOOKUP to do that. So what we'll insert the function, we'll go VLOOKUP, and what's our lookup value? It's New York. Table array is this. State is on the leftmost side. We want the second column, which is cars sold, and false to get the exact match. And so we get 85. So what Excel is going to do is going to come here, it's going to go to New York, it finds it, and pulls in cars sold 85. However, what if we wanted the second match? Or what if we just wanted to know that there's more than one match? We could do an if statement to do that. Because say we look at this, here's a New York, here's a New York, here's a New York. So all of a sudden we know there's at least 3. I mean, if we want to pull in the second one, the third one. For this first example, I'm just going to show you how to tell if there are multiple matches. So since we have 3 of them here, instead of pulling in the first one, because then we're not going to know if there could be a second, could be a third. So we're going to do an if statement to get around this. So we already got the VLOOKUP, so we know what it would pull if there is only one match. Let's do an if statement. And we're going to do the COUNTIF function. We're going to count how many times this New York, or whatever state this is here, occurs. So we're going to do COUNTIF, and we want the range. So here's the range, comma, and what's the criteria? Is it equal to New York? And so we're checking if COUNTIF is greater than 1. Because if it equals to 1, then it's okay. Then we're fine. Then we want to do the VLOOKUP. But so if it's greater than 1, say if there's 2 or 3 instances of it, then we want to, here we're just going to say multiple matches. We'll just type that in. So now if there's multiple matches, like for New York, and like when I press enter, this should say multiple matches. If it doesn't, if there is only 1 instance, then it's going to do the VLOOKUP. So I'm going to press enter. Press OK. That was just the error was because I didn't have double parentheses here. I forget that sometimes. So there we go. We got it. Multiple matches because it's looking and it's counting New York 1, 2, 3. There's 3 of them, so it's greater than 1. So it says multiple matches. If I copy this down, this says 90 because it's counting how many Ohios there are. There's 1. So this statement is false. So what it's going to do is going to do the VLOOKUP, and the VLOOKUP will go here, find Ohio, pull in cars sold, which is 90. So that is just the first way to get around the multiple matches, just by basically telling that you have multiple matches. Now we'll go over a couple examples to show you how to exactly pull that in. A second way to pull in multiple matches in a VLOOKUP function is by using an added column. And in that added column, we're going to kind of number each instance that we get. So then you can just do a VLOOKUP with that name and number in it. So for example, say we've got this. We've got a bunch of people's names and their grades. But we got multiple instances. Like here's Joe, got a grade of 44, Joe with a grade of 88, grade of 34. And here we're pulling in. We want to pull in with a VLOOKUP the grade. But we don't know, I mean, it's going to pull the first instance, which would be 44, which would be here. But like, what if we want to get the second instance or the third instance? You can't really do that easily, unless one way to do it is to add an extra column. So let me show you how we do that. So we're going to just simply insert an extra column here. We'll just call it added, whatever, it doesn't matter. And we're going to create a formula that will number this. So like, instead of this saying Joe, we want it to say Joe 1. Then when we get down to here, we want it to say Joe 2. And here to say Joe 3. So it's got the name and number. So then when you're doing a search, if you want to find, say, the Joe's second grade, you put Joe 2. You do a VLOOKUP on this, and it'll pull it in. So, or if you don't even want to change the name, you can put that right into the formula. But I'll show you, it's just this way, just to show you how it works. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a formula. We're going to start off by doing K2, which is the name. The first part of the new name we want it to be is like Joe. So we're going to do that. And then we're going to put the and. That's kind of like concatenate. All it's going to do is combine the different cells. And the second part is just simply a count. We're going to do a COUNTIF function. Although it's going to be a little tricky here, because we're going to count if, and the first part is the range. So the range is going to be from K2 to down here to K10 or whatever. However, we don't want it to, I mean, we always want it to start as K2, but we don't want to count all the way down, because if we're going to count Joe all the way down, there's 3 instances, and all of a sudden this is going to be Joe 3 right off the bat. We only want to count up to this cell that we're on, which is K2. So what we can do is, I just did the outline here, so it's K2 to K2, comma, and then what do we search for? What's the criteria? And the criteria is also K2, because we're looking for Joe. Press enter. There, it becomes Joe 1. See, if we go through it again, it's going to say count. It's going to K2, which is Joe, and COUNTIF from K2 to K2. So it's really just one cell, and it's looking for Joe. So there's only one instance of it. The one thing you want to change though is these aren't anchored down. So these are just relative references. So if I copy this down, now this is K3 to K3. And see, I mean, it is right because it's just like K3 to K3. But once we get to, say, the next Joe here, it's still going to say Joe 1 because all this is looking at is K6 to K6. Which, the formula's right. It's only doing K6 to K6. But we want to copy all previous instances of it. So we always want to start at K2. So what we need to do, we need to put $signs in front of it to anchor it. Now we press enter. Now if we copy this down, there, now it's Joe 2, because what it's looking for is, it's doing the K6, which is Joe, and the second part is the count if, which is K2 to K6. And from this range, there are 2 instances of Joe, so it puts a 2. So now we've got the added column with the number. So now if you want to find out Joe's second score, all you got to simply do is look up for Joe 2. So what we can do is a VLOOKUP. What value are we looking up? We're looking up this name. The table array, we want to make sure the added column is our leftmost column. And we're pulling in 3 for the grade and false for an exact match. And it's 88. If we copy this down, see, well, first here, it's coming to 88. So look at Joe 2, and there's an 88. Jill, now we need to number it. So we have it as 1. So now Jill 1 becomes 66. If you didn't want to change this name from Jill 1 or so on, you can just add it right in here into the formula. But I'm not gonna go into that. But this is just simply to show you how to do the VLOOKUP. And now you can pull the second match if you want to change this to the third match. It's 34, which is right here, and that's the second way to pull in multiple matches with a VLOOKUP. And a third way that I'm going to show you how to get the second match in a VLOOKUP is kind of changing the table range that you're looking for through the offset match functions. So what we'll do is, say we've got the same example as example 2. We've got the names of the students with the grades, and say we want to get Joe's second grade on here. So let's do a VLOOKUP. I'm just going to type this one in, and we're looking up this name in this range here, comma 2, comma false. So 2 is just we have the second grade, and false is for an exact match, and we have 44. I'm just going to put the $signs in here just to anchor this. So it's always looking in this range. Now copy it down. So what it's going to do now, it's just that this is the basic VLOOKUP formula. It's going to find the first instance of Joe, which is 44. What if we wanted to find a second instance? We can use an offset match formula to replace this J2 to K9. So basically, right now we're looking at J2 to K9, which is here. And it's going to pull the first match. To get the second match, we want to find where this match is and go 1 below it. So we want to be looking in this range. So now when we look in this range, it's going to the first time it sees Joe is going to be right here, and it's going to pull the 88. So in this range, it's going to be the first instance. However, in the full scheme of the table, it's really the second instance, which is what we want. So what we'll do is I'm going to delete this, and we're going to put in an offset formula. We're not going to put the match part in yet. That'll come later. I like to build the formulas first. So we're going to do offset. And what offset is going to do is going to kind of change the range. So offset, we start off here in this cell, which is J2. And what the offset will do is tell you where do you want this new table to begin. So first is the rows. We want to go down 1 row. So we're going to put a 1. We want to go over 0 columns. We don't want to move it, so we want it to start really in right here, J3. And now these next 2 parts are how big do you want this table. So here, what's the height? How high do you want this table? We only need it about 6 or 7 high, but I'm just going to put 30. It's not going to hurt anything by going all the way down. And how wide do you want this table? We want it 2 columns wide, so we put a 2 in there. Now we close this off, press enter, and there, we got 88. So what this is doing now is looking up G2. This offset, what it's doing, it's starting at J2. It's moving down 1 over 0. So it's still right here. And then how big is this table that we're going to have? It's 30 down and 2 over. So it's going down 30 and over 2. So now this is your new table. So when Excel looks at it, it's going to say, okay, where's Joe? It starts here, goes down there. There's Joe. Goes to the second instance, or the second column, I'm sorry. And it pulls an 88. So there, that's how you can get the second instance. However, we want to put the match formula in there, so we don't, like, we put a 1 in here just because we know we want it to move down 1 spot from J2 to J3. But that's not going to help. I mean, it'll help for Joe, but it's not going to help if you're looking for the second instance of Jill or the second instance of anyone else that's in here. So we want to put the match. So the match will tell us how many rows down to go. So pretty much if it finds Jill, it'll return 3. So then it's going to go down 3 spots, and it'll start here when it's looking for the second instance of Jill. So what I'm going to do, first let's just show the match formula right here, then I'll copy it in. So we're going to do equals match, and we just kind of want to find where the match is. So what's the lookup value? The lookup value is Joe. What is the array? Array. It's right here. So it's going to look in here and say, where's Joe? And we end up with a 0. So for an exact match, we press enter, and it comes up as 1. Because in this range, from J2 to J9, Joe is the first instance. So here's that 1, which we want to replace this one with. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to simply copy this, Control C. I'm going to go up here, and I'm going to just delete this one and put the match into it. There we go. Now if I copy this down, this should work, and Jill shows 99. So if you're looking at for Jill, there's Jill, 66 for the first instance, but since we're looking up the second instance, it's right here is the second one, 99, so it's pulling the second instance. So this is a great way to change the range that you're looking in by just finding the match, going down 1 spot, and then creating a new table array to look into. So that concludes the 3 ways to find a second match in a Vlookup statement. Thanks a lot.